And how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm extremely well, thank you. It's hotter than the hinges of hell in this office where I am sitting, and but people are used to me saying that now. I think last time I said I was going to turn into a puddle of goo. That's because I didn't have a martini at hand, which I
Oh,
have now. So I am totally prepared. Now, I want to start off our episode, whatever we call these things, or this installment, whatever, by letting you know you have quite a few fans out there. When I mentioned the Ask Eddie programs from the stage at the recent NOIR City Chicago Festival, you got more applause, I think, than me.
that's
I mean,
true.
I had applause when I get on the stage, but it
Yeah.
was yes when I said with I do these with the Film Noir Foundation's Director of Communications, Ann Hockens, and a big cheer went up in the audience. It was wonderful.
Oh,
I wish you could have been there to hear it. So
me too. That's wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
you are well loved by the connoisseurs who regularly watch this program. So and Chicago was fabulous. It was wonderful. You saw the picture that
Hmm.
you recirculated on social media of that crowd we had on the first Saturday night for Call Northside 777. I dare say that was maybe as big a crowd as that film has had since it opened in 1948. I'm sure they had bigger crowds in 48, but that was really great. And then Alan Rohde introduced a screening of Chicago Deadline a few nights later on a Tuesday night, and we had about 400 and some 450 people or something
Wow.
in the house for that one. And on a Tuesday night, that is pretty extraordinary. So
Yeah.
it's good. It's really good. And the thing is, I'm really looking forward to at some point having the opportunity to tell Christopher Nolan that Noir City bumped Oppenheimer off the big screen at the Music Box Theater in Chicago. So as much as he demands that film be shown on the biggest screen possible, not while Noir City is in town, I'm happy to say.
Well,
So,
I did go see Oppenheimer last night, finally. 70
oh,
millimeter
okay.
IMAX. Yeah, Brendan and I went. It
Uh,
was yeah,
go.
it was good. Yeah. And it did not feel as long as it was, which is the thing I was worried about going in. It didn't have places where it was slacking or felt padded or anything. Like it was really compelling. I think Robert Downey Jr. was amazing in it.
Yeah,
He's he's an incredible actor, and he was so good in it.
they all were good. Everyone was great. The casting was fantastic. I will say that it's probably a film that I admire more than I actually enjoyed.
Yeah,
I mean, I had I was engrossed the entire
yeah,
time, but at the end, you do kind of think, "Wow, that was amazing. That did not feel like a 3 hour movie." Uh, so the storytelling was pretty ingenious and really um, admirable, you
yeah,
know. And I have a few little problems with the film.
yeah.
Just as much as I loved Robert Downey, and we shouldn't talk about this too much because there are probably a lot of people who haven't seen the film. But as much as I loved his performance in the film, I had some issues with making his character of Strauss the heavy kind of in
Yeah,
the piece.
yeah,
Not that I disagree with that in reality, what I know of the real story. It's just in the film does kind of climax with the bomb,
yeah,
right? And then there's a whole third act to go, at which in which Downey plays a critical part. And I'm just not sure if he could if that character could outdo the bomb as like the dramatic high point of the film. So it is it's interesting. It's such a Do not take this as a complaint in any way, because I just felt like that is uh the most complicated intellectual movie. It's 3 hours long, and it's made like $500 million,
Yeah.
which
Well,
ought to
no.
show you how starved audiences are for this kind of material.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's really good. I mean, one of the reasons why I was happy it had done so well is that that's sort of, and a lot of things have bombed this summer. Like a lot of things have bombed this summer. And I'm hoping that is sending a message to Hollywood that we want more interesting films than, than they've been producing. I did not like the sex scene. I could have really lived without that being in there. I don't know.
You mean the second one? There are two. You
Yeah.
you mean the fantasy one?
No, the actual one.
Oh,
I thought that was really clever, actually, in the
when he was giving
testifying. Like, I thought that was really interesting and cool. Now, I don't know. I guess like it just didn't feel necessary to me. You know what I mean?
This is not how I thought we were going to start off the show this week. But I will say this, that if you're Chris Nolan and you're trying to tell a story so quickly,
yeah,
and you use shorthand as much as you possibly can. And I think having them be naked in that scene was shorthand for how intimate that relationship really was. Because if you don't have that,
no. The scene where they're like I got that when they're meeting up and they're just talking. And they're both.
Did I miss a sex scene in this movie? I don't.
Yeah, the first time like they meet, they have sex, and she has him read Sanskrit. And
okay.
So sex like this.
There are 3 sex scenes in the movie. Wow.
Yeah, and the second one,
we're really pumping up the audience for this film, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Didn't bother me.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know. I thought it was silly, mainly because it was one of those things. I don't know.
My attitude is if Florence Pugh is okay with it, I'm okay with it too. I mean, that's just.
I don't feel like she was exploited or anything. She's a grown ass woman and she has power. If she wanted to do the nude scene, she did the nude scene. I just didn't think, like, to me, it was just kind of took me out of it because, it was just like, to me, it was kind of silly. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? It was just like, because they did plenty to show their relationship after that. Yeah. Like, I thought the thing with her throwing the flowers away was much more symbolic of their actual relationship and stuff. So anyway, I'd give it.
I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch this movie again at some point, and probably at home.
Yeah.
Because I want to really study it.
Yeah.
To see what the average length of each scene is.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing how much expository and character information he packs into these scenes that move so quickly and jump time frames so quickly. That's how he manages to keep this pace going, so that you never feel like you're slogging through this.
Right.
It's like it's cinematic storytelling. Like he has an amazing Chris Nolan. When it's all said and done, they ask what his movies are about. They're all going to be about time.
Yeah.
It seems like his movies are all about time, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, that's not what we came here to discuss. But
no, but I did want to say,
God forbid, I also saw Barbie. So that's that's a conversation for another time. But how nice is it that we're talking about 2 hugely popular new movies?
Yeah, and like I said, something different. They're not like superhero films and stuff. I think that people are just, are tired of all these franchises. I do wish Christopher Nolan. I hate his sound mixing because I lost at least a third of the dialogue, where I simply could not understand what people were saying. I hate that about him.
I perused our questions briefly beforehand, so I know that we have a question that kind of pertains to that coming up. Maybe I'll save my comments for when we get there. But I did not have that problem with this film. And I really do believe it's a case-by-case basis. I'm answering that question or addressing that issue right now. I think that Chris Nolan takes big risks with his sound mixes.
Yeah.
And there's no way to guarantee that the theater is going to be appropriate, that the acoustics in the theater are going to be right, that they're going to play it at exactly the perfect volume for you to completely get the sound mix in balance. It reminds me of when I made a short film and it was digital, and digital is so volatile because you can't guarantee based on the equipment you're using to play it, based on the where you're showing it, based on the light leakage in the play, whatever. I mean, digital will always look different. So I mean, I've showed my film and it looked perfect in some places, and then it was a mess. Like, this isn't even close to what I shot.
Yeah.
And I have a funny feeling that that's what happens with Nolan's sound mixes.
Yeah, because it was just really, like I said, because it was just really frustrating, and it was worse for Brendan because he's deaf in one ear.
Okay,
so
but you also saw it in IMAX.
Yes, I saw it in IMAX.
I saw it in 70 millimeter, not IMAX, and I thought the imagery was fantastic, and the sound was fine.
Yeah.
I did not find the score overwhelming. A lot of people said, "Oh my God, the score! I got sick of it," and it was like, I loved the score. I thought the score was really great because I was not that aware of it half the time.
I was going to say, I didn't notice the score at all, which is a compliment, by the way.
Yeah.
Because I was just, it didn't pull me out of the film at all.
I mean, at times I was aware that there was music there that was working on me, but it wasn't like it wasn't a score. It wasn't like an orchestral score or anything. But I thought the sound mix was really good. I mean, and I've seen other movies that are incomprehensible to me, including Chris Nolan movies.
Yeah.
I give Dunkirk a pass because that's a war movie and you're supposed to not be able to hear what's going on. But Inception and some of these other films, it's like I can't decipher any of this stuff. But anyway.
Yeah, and the only other thing I was going to say is I have to say, when they detonate the bomb, it made me so badly wish that we could have seen that episode of the Twin Peaks: The Return. That episode where he does
episode number 8, where he does his Los Alamos thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have given anything to see that on a big screen.
Yeah, I think of I thought of that a lot when I was watching the film. That episode came to me. And you know what else is interesting? Just to throw out a quick advertisement here. We just managed, because I kind of programmed the Noir City festivals way ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I was not, and I don't do anything, never have I programmed a festival to take advantage of anything happening in contemporary culture.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes as a counterpoint, but it hasn't been like a tie-in, But at Noir City, DC in October, we will be showing, I just added this to the bill because now I've seen Oppenheimer. We're going to be showing Walk a Crooked Mile from 1948, which is about this very thing. It's about communist spies infiltrating the bomb development program. They don't call it Los Alamos. I think they call it Lakeview Laboratories or something like that. But it's the closest we come to touching on Trinity and the whole thing in real time. The movie was obviously made after that, but to me, that was very interesting. It's like one of the first Cold War films, and you start to see the wheels turning that would eventually grind down Oppenheimer are kind of starting with this film. So I'm so happy that Todd Hitchcock at AFI decided, I called him and I said, we got to show this, because people who've seen Oppenheimer will really get a kick out of seeing this movie. And it's going to happen. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I did have a moment. It was so, this isn't really a spoiler. I think this is going to be okay, but
they did drop the bomb.
They did drop the bomb. But there's just a scene where they're saying we think, information was leaked to the Soviets from, Los Alamos. And I was like, yeah, it's probably the Limey. And I think that's because I was in England when this huge number of Russian moles were found in the in the 80s in England.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like that's my guess.
But it's interesting. I'll be curious to see how people react to Walk a Crooked Mile now that they've seen Oppenheimer, and I think it makes it brings the era alive and makes it very, very fresh. And anyway, we'll see how that goes. So
I think that's really exciting that you're doing that. I'd like to see that. I've never actually watched that movie.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I've shown it only once before at a NOIR City Festival, or twice, I think. And once was just in San Francisco because part of the movie is shot on location in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to have commies in 1948, they're going to be in San Francisco, right?
Of course they are.
So
we're the den of inequity.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I just showed it because of the location shooting, and people kind of, they treated the stuff, the espionage stuff and the spy stuff like a gag, because it was just ancient history at that point. But now with Oppenheimer, I'll be curious to see what the audience reaction is. So, okay, let's go. Who wants to read the first?
I'll do the
somewhat
first one.
Long question.
Yes, I couldn't figure out a way to trim this, so we're getting longer. This is from Mike. This past Saturday night, we were in your audience at the Music Box Theater in Chicago for the screening of Call Northside 777. And as always, we enjoyed your introduction to the film. I'm not used to seeing NOIR films on the big screen in a crowd, so I was unprepared for the audience's laughter at several points during the show, when the reaction was inspired not by a deliberately humorous line, but rather by a serious line that to a contemporary listener viewer sounds old-fashioned at best and downright cheesy at worst. It happened often enough that I began to realize that for some viewers, the 1948 dialogue seemed hopelessly funny, no matter how serious the scene, whereas for others, the same dialogue elicited no such reaction. I think that they were more willing than the laughers to suspend their disbelief for the sake of the movie and the NOIR experience. So my question is, do you see this kind of split reaction among viewers when you present NOIR films across the country? And if so, what do you make of it? It's okay to laugh. Is it okay to laugh at a serious scene when the dialogue sounds too hokey to sustain the mood?
Okay. First, I want to explain to people watching, I thought they had a backlog of questions. Why is this question so fresh? That's because this question was not submitted through the proper channels. It was an email directly to me. And I felt that it was such an interesting question that I sent it to you and I said, let's put this on here and just deal with this straight away and not wait all this time. And I did contact Mike. I responded to him via email and asked him if it was okay that we include this question on Ask Eddie. Okay, so here's the thing, because a couple of people actually at the venue mentioned this to me. Mike may have been one of them, because they said, geez, it's weird. People are laughing. The problem here is not, it certainly is not anything to do with the movie. It's not anything to do with the intelligence of the audience. It had to do with the fact that was an absolutely full house.
Yeah.
And it's kind of rare these days for people to see a movie from the mid 20th century with 600 people, right? And what happens when you get a full house is it creates a certain energy level that some people are compelled to react, right? And when you're sitting in a seat and there are people on both sides of you and in front of you and behind you, either you're compelled to react because you have to let people know that you're smarter than the movie, or you just have an instinctive, squirmy, nervous reaction. Because I have definitely found you, and you're a horror movie fan, so you know this better than anybody, that if you see a horror movie in a crowded theater, there's a lot of laughing.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of laughing because it's a nervous reaction that people have to watching this stuff. Sometimes it's just like it's four people in a group together and they want their friends to know that isn't this funny? Like, isn't this kind of amazing? We're going to see an old movie and we're compelled to kind of chuckle at the old movie. So I got over this a long time ago because this is the trade off for still getting life out of 75-year-old movies.
Mm-hmm.
Is if you are trying to get a full house for a movie that is 75 years old, you have to accept the fact that a certain percentage of that audience, and you hope it's small, is going to laugh even at the stuff that isn't actually funny. Now, a lot of it is funny. I mean, come on, I showed, Unfaithfully Yours at this festival.
Yeah.
I showed The Velvet Touch at this festival. There are scenes in Key Largo that are funny. There's stuff in The Lady from Shanghai that's funny. I don't think that we need to pretend we're in a museum watching these films and like they aren't movies to be enjoyed. But I know what Mike is talking about, but I just kind of counsel people on both sides of this. Like if you're a younger person watching these movies, just and this is a major issue in today, you're not in your living room.
Yeah.
You're not home in your living room, right? So you try to exercise a little common courtesy with these movies. And if you're a hardcore cinephile watching these movies, don't let these people take you out of the experience, right? Because what I find sometimes is when people get really angry about it and
Yeah.
like stomp out of the theater and say, make them stop laughing at the movie, it's like, you're not watching the movie, you're judging the audience. You're spending too much energy worrying about people who are laughing at the film. And when it comes right down to it, I'll take the sound of people laughing inappropriately, because what could be more innocuous than laughing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take people laughing and having a good time as long as they've paid their money, over over people grousing and grumbling, or so it doesn't really bother me anymore. I get it. I totally get it. But I don't want to be one of those people who says, this is why I don't go to the movies anymore. And this is why it's better to stay home and never go out and to watch these things on my big screen TV. Um, I think that's on you. I think that's on that person who doesn't really want to be in a social situation, because I can tell you, if you go, and I know this from what I just experienced in Chicago, there's a lot of people who love this stuff, who meet people at these shows, who become lifelong friends because of these shows. This is all I heard the entire time I was in Chicago, is people telling me, this is the 10th year I've come to this festival and I've made such good friends and blah, blah, blah. And to me, that has far more value than worrying about somebody laughing inappropriately. It's just like, what can you say? There's stupid people everywhere you go.
Yeah. And it's,
Are you going to let
yeah.
them depress you and bring you down, and not have you can't enjoy the movie because somebody 5 rows in front of you is an asshole? I mean, is laughing at the movie? I wouldn't worry about it so much.
Yeah. And it's so funny too, because, it's so much fun to see stuff with an audience, like, especially the Silent Film Festival, because people are completely reactive in the Silent Film Festival. Like they cheer and laugh and all this stuff. I mean, they're really way more interactive, I think, than any other audience that I've ever been in a movie with, which I really love. But it was so funny because I went to see Wise Blood yesterday at the Roxy. And like when John Huston's name came up, I wanted to applaud because like at TCM and North City and the Silent Film Festival, people applaud at different credits.
Yes.
And like I had to restrain myself from starting to applaud when John Huston's name came up because I'm just so used to being able like to do that if I'm seeing a classic movie.
It's a
That's all.
very, I know exactly what you mean. It's a very fine line. Um, and it is interesting to me that at Noir City, people genuinely, it's a reactive audience as well. And, when the bad guy dies, the audience will applaud,
Yeah, it's
you
great.
know, and they always, always applaud at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yet when I saw Oppenheimer, which let's face it, is a heavy, heavy film, you
Yeah.
don't feel like applauding. But if ever there was a film where I felt the director deserved
Yeah.
some applause at the end, like that was a feat you just pulled off. And quite honestly, I sort of felt the same way about Barbie. It's like that was a high wire act. It's like that could have gone so wrong in so many ways, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And at the end, it's like, hey, I'll give some applause for Greta Gerwig there. That was well done, well done. But I didn't hear it in either movie.
Yeah.
So it's funny that I guess I'm doing the flip side of the coin here on Mike's question. Yeah, they're laughing at a movie from the 1940s, but for some reason, audiences are also more willing to applaud
Yeah.
a movie from the 1940s than they are a movie made today. For whatever reason that may be, are they applauding themselves for having the good taste and the class to go to the show and watch this movie on a beautiful day in Chicago? Maybe they're applauding themselves. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they are, that's fine by me. As opposed to, I don't want to applaud Oppenheimer because somebody who hates it might be in the theater as well. Everybody that goes to Noir City is kind of already of a like mind.
Yeah.
So you're not fearful of being judged by applauding the film, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a long answer to question number one. Okay. All right. Carlton from Georgia he says, I am planning to attend my first Noir City this year, maybe in DC or Chicago. Well, Carlton, I didn't see you in Chicago. I hope you were there, but if you were, you didn't introduce yourself.
Yeah. And by the way, just so people know, these questions are from February because we're back in our backlog.
Okay. Now, the last one was from right now, but now the rest are older questions. Any suggestions for first timers to maximize the experience? Well, Carlton, if you were in Chicago, my apologies for not answering this question because the festival is over now. And I probably will not be able to attend the entire festival. And is there any chance of you coming to Atlanta, Georgia? Very, very doubtful that there will be a Noir City Festival in Atlanta, Georgia. I am, as the I would say if a pass is available for the festival, buy a pass, even though you can't attend the whole thing. And I'm not just trying to, con people out of their money or something, but it's great because that's a great way of supporting the Film Noir Foundation is just buy the pass because you're supporting the venue and you're supporting the Film Noir Foundation, even if you can't attend everything. And in some of the venues, the pass gets you a little bonus something. Like in Detroit coming up, the pass holders will get to do a little meet and greet thing with me, and I'll answer questions, and we'll have cocktails and all this stuff. And that's really fun. So there are advantages to that. I would say that, for the festivals where we do more than 3 days, which is like LA and Seattle and Chicago and DC, obviously here in the Bay Area, you know, pay attention and figure out which of the weekends you want to attend. And just, you know, be chill. That's my big advice, right? because it's a good group of people. There is no we have no nobody has to dress up. That's an optional thing, and it's wonderful when people choose to do it. Chicago has really turned out. I mean, in the early days, I could count on this hand the people who wore period clothes, and now, wow, Chicago turns out. It was really nice to see. Um, that's about it. There's nothing too complicated. You know, the films have a quick turn in some cases, so you want to make sure you eat a hearty breakfast if you want to come and see movies all day long. Uh, we always try to leave a gap between the afternoons and the evening shows so that you can actually get dinner, and that's it. I don't know what else to tell you. Um, that is how we roll. And Carlton, I hope we see you at one of these fests.
Yeah, and also when you get a pass, you get early seating, so that's another advantage to getting a pass.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the venue appreciates it. If you tell the people at the venue that I have a pass, or you have it hanging on you, they treat you well because they appreciate the fact that you have made that commitment. Not every one of our festivals sells a pass. I don't understand why that is, but
that's up to the venue.
that is up to the venue.
Just so people know.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this is from Jerry from Burke, Virginia. This is kind of a long one too, but it's like a couple different points. So.
Well, Anne, I'm looking at this and it's like I think we can save a lot of time.
Okay.
On this one by not reading the whole question, but just telling what Jerry's point is here.
Well, he's wanting to know if we would do downloadable back issues of North City magazine. But could we get them printed?
Yes.
Basically. And also basically, can we make money from this? Can we charge more?
Well, Jerry, I think what Jerry is suggesting is, he has bought back issues, digital back issues, but he wants to know why we're not making those available as print issues as well through Amazon. And the thing is about Jerry's question is he is assuming that these things are a lot easier than they actually are. Like he says it wouldn't, since the magazine is already laid out, it wouldn't take much to do it. Well, the thing is, it takes Michael Cronenberg several days to adapt our print edition to Amazon's specs. So we would be asking Michael to go back and reconfigure for the print editions like 25 issues. And that's a lot. Now, I'm not saying that Jerry's observations, because he's saying, it could be a whole revenue stream for the Film Noir Foundation if people were able to buy back issues. And he also notes in here that, he's found the annuals selling online for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right. And that, of course, is not money that goes to the Film Noir Foundation. That's people who have bought the annuals at, fair market price and then realize that they're now out of print. So they're selling them for $100 and $200. I find it personally, I cannot do that. I cannot take something that I know is a $25 item and sell it for $100 to benefit the foundation, right? I mean, but it's weird that somebody else is doing it and they're keeping all the money. That's just, hey, welcome to America.
Yeah.
But I understand exactly what Jerry is suggesting, and while it's a good idea, it is something that is a lot more time consuming than he realizes, and we work everything very close to, we hold this stuff close. Michael does all of this. We like having total control over it. It's not out of the question what he's suggesting, but we all work so damn hard doing all this stuff. And Michael puts out, this is not Michael's full-time job.
Yeah.
Michael has a full-time job, right? So everybody that works for the foundation is doing this as extra work.
Yeah.
For you, for me, for Michael, for Darl, all this stuff. And it's so not as easy as all that, but I appreciate the suggestion. And while I'm saying it's not out of the question, I've also felt like those previous issues the best of those have been pulled out and turned into the annuals that we've produced. And those we can actually make money on, as opposed to the back issues of the print magazine.
Yeah,
So
because just so
okay.
people know, when you buy the magazine, we only get about $1 of revenue from that, from the ones that are the print editions. Just so people know that Amazon takes most of that money. And Jerry also pointed out that he's very happy just printing it out on his printer. So
Yes, he said, and that's what we initially felt. It was like, if you get a digital issue, it is now your option to read it digitally on an iPad or on a laptop or whatever. And the bonus for that is we include links in the magazine. So very often there'll be a link to a clip from the film, or sometimes a whole movie if it's something that's really, really hard to see. And we find a version of it that we don't feel we're in copyright infringement by putting the link in. We will do that. But anyway, that's all. I mean, those are the plus sides of an all digital edition. And then people can print it out on their laser printer and read it that way if they want.
or print it out at work.
Exactly. Get somebody else to pay for the printer.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Alan, our friend Alan in San Anselmo, California, asks, what should take precedence, the music or the sound? Very often, if the sound effects are that powerful and important, they take the music out. There are directors who feel that one shouldn't hear the music. Music can be overshadowed by horses' whinnies or anything the sound effect person put into the track prior to the musical scoring. What should take precedence? I'm going to confess, Alan, I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. I don't know if Alan is asking what should take precedence or what has more value. I'm not sure, but I will just say that this is entirely the director's decision. This is what directors do, right? And they work with a sound mixer. This is what a sound mixer does, right? Yeah. And a really, really great sound mix balances all this stuff out so that you don't really notice it when it's happening, right? The sound effects come up at exactly the right place. The music kind of drops a little bit, or the music comes in, and but depending on the type of score it is, you'll notice it or not. Scores have changed dramatically over the years. A good movie score today is pretty much an unnoticeable movie score, which was not the case back in classic Hollywood, where there was a prestige to having a composer, typically a European composer like Korngold or Miklos Rozsa or Franz Waxman or Max Steiner or somebody come in and compose you a fabulous score, which is kind of interesting considering that back then they rarely released soundtrack albums of this music, right? Which is fantastic that they do that now. But I don't really know how to answer this question, because I don't. I like a score that's really, really smart. And if it just becomes organically part of the tapestry of the film, then I don't think it's I don't know why. I just thought of like Cliff Martinez's music for Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape. It's like it's a great score. It's incredibly simple, but it's just there. It is. It just becomes part of the film. Or when you like the Tangerine Dream score for Sorcerer,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. There's the Tangerine Dream score for Thief is great.
Yeah.
Some people, it's like, oh, I heard the score, that's terrible. The score should not intrude, but I just feel that, cinema is image and sound.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that um, enough young filmmakers understand the sound part of it. Because I remember going to film school, everybody just wanted to make pictures.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought about the soundtrack. And that's why student films, by and large, suck.
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the soundtrack, because
Yeah.
it's so lame, it takes you out of the experience. There are gaps, there's flaws, there's sound dropout, all of this stuff. Until you make a film with a really good sound mix, you haven't really figured out how to make a film.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
anyway.
And I was just gonna say, it was funny seeing like Wise Blood last night, because that was a horrible score. That is one of the worst scores I've ever heard in a film. I was really shocked.
Who did the score? I can't remember.
I can't remember. Yeah, I didn't recognize the name, but it was just like, oh my God, it was a terrible score. And then the other thing I was gonna say is, and I think too, like there's still some films that have really like the new Halloween trilogy, which John Carpenter did the score with his grandson and his own son, or sorry, his son and his godson, who's Ray Davies' nephew. He's the other Davies' son, and that soundtrack's amazing, and people loved it. So and it's a big part of horror. I think horror definitely, even now, that's one of the genres where the score is still more noticeable than in other genres.
I agree. It's funny you say that because I was just flashed on. We recently lost William Friedkin, and
Yeah.
he was a little known aspect of his genius is the way he handled film scores and soundtracks. And I remember, The Exorcist was extraordinary because it's a good score, but when he found that piece of music, that Mike Oldfield Tubular Bells thing, that was like incredible. Like that piece of music became a part of movie history. And his scores by and large are really, really good. And Don Ellis's score for The French Connection, that was a bad sound mix. I didn't realize it until they were able to do a good one, that the sound mix on The French Connection as it was released was not very good, because it was kind of muddy, because the music got kind of mashed into the sound effects and everything that was going on in the film, and it didn't register. But man, when he remastered that whole film, and I saw it at the Chinese theater in LA, and it was incredible. The score was just fantastic, and it was integrated so beautifully into the movie that I was aware of it because that's my job. I'm aware of these things, right? But I don't think that the average viewer would have said, "What a great score." They just would have felt the score,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, really, really good.
Yeah, and I always thought that was one of the amazing things about John Ford is the scores in his, because he also uses the Son of the Pioneer, so there's a lot of sort of diegetic music as well. But I mean, if you want to see great scores, I think that was something that was really one of the many exceptional things about John Ford. Was his
And it was
use of music.
and his music, his scores were kind of a signature. It was a signature on the film that there was a sound to a John Ford film as much as the views of Monument Valley and all that. And So to me, it's impossible to say which takes precedence because the whole idea as a filmmaker is to have them in balance, so that it's all in the service of telling the story.
Yeah, and also I was watching it this weekend while I was doing the TV listings, but I put on Candyman, the original one, not the more recent one. And Philip Glass did that score. And that is like one of the greatest film scores I have ever heard. If you have not heard that score, it's amazing. If you haven't seen the movie, people, you need to see Candyman. It's an excellent film.
It is good. It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
So people don't pay enough attention to not just the music, but just the sound.
Sound editing,
in
yeah.
the film is absolutely essential as the picture. And
Yeah.
I always say, if you want to know what that's all about, watch the Blair Witch Project, because that film was a phenomenon because of the soundtrack. And because the people who bought that when they saw it, I think at Sundance or whatever, the producers said, these kids who made this movie, they've got something here, and because it's found footage, it doesn't have to look good, but their soundtrack is god awful. It's just horrendous. So they bought the film and they reconstructed the entire soundtrack from start to finish.
Yeah.
It turned it into this terrifying movie.
I did not think it was terrifying. I thought it was long and boring.
Well,
and I saw it in the theater when it came out. I do not understand why that film, like, oh my God. I mean, I guess
I'm gonna be honest with you, Ann. I kind of chortled many times in the Blair Witch Project because it was a film about kids who couldn't read a map. that's kind of what the movie is about.
It really is. It really is.
They get
Did you
themselves
stop arguing about the map.
They get themselves in this terrifying situation because they are unable to read a map. So this is a movie that also exists pre-internet, because obviously these kids would have all had iPhones and been able to find their way out of the woods without any problem. About 10 years later, it's like, too bad, kids, But I mean, I appreciate I get what you're saying. I mean, it's not, I wasn't terrified by the film, but the film is effective for an audience, but it would not have been effective without the redone soundtrack.
Oh yeah, that makes a big difference. And the thing is when you're watching a movie, if the sound is bad, it's like, you're right, your brain just shuts off. I mean, if you can't hear the dialogue clearly, and like you said, I mean, that's something you see with student films and sometimes art films and stuff like that. It's like you really do have to have it. And that was one thing. I know I'm back on John Carpenter, but I mean, that was one of the things that made Halloween such a great film was, that is a phenomenal score. I mean, that's an incredible score. And, it was John Carpenter as a composer as well. And that was something.
And yes, I completely agree. I mean, John Carpenter understands the sound, the impact of sound in movies more than most directors, I think. But also it's interesting in Oppenheimer, like the biggest impact in the film is when the sound completely drops out. Right? I mean, that was great. It's like you have more than a minute or so of no sound whatsoever in the movie. And I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but it was a daring decision on Nolan's part, but it was great. It was perfect,
Yeah. Well, that really conveys what they were experiencing, because that's what happened. I mean, that was that was so effective.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I love okay, we're not going to go back.
We're back on up. We've got to okay. This episode is going to wind up as long as the movie.
I entered tonight's episode and thinking, this one's going to be shorter. We're gonna do a shorter one, but we spent 15 minutes or something talking about Oppenheimer. So okay, let's go. We're not gonna shortchange anybody's questions, but let's go.
Let's go.
Here we go.
This is David from Chesterfield, Virginia. I have a question concerning a NOIR film set in England, but starring American actors. In Night in the City, Richard Widmark would not be able to obtain a work permit and has probably exceeded the time limit on a visitor's visa. Perhaps he escaped deportation because he works off the books. But the story continues with him attempting to go get a legitimate business. How's he going to pull that off? A worse example is Burt Lancaster in Kiss the Blood Off My Hands. He is in England illegally, having jumped ship. How does Bill Saunders not get deported at the end of his prison sentence, and how does he get a legitimate job as a truck driver without a passport or work papers? Also, there's nothing in the plot that makes it imperative that it be set in England. The story could easily have been changed to take place in the States, since Hollywood never had any reluctance to make major changes to novels to which they had purchased the rights. Why not make this change? Or am I the only one who notices or cares about such details?
Yes. David. David Fishman from Chesterfield, Virginia. You are the only person. Okay. No, seriously. Interesting points, but I think your number one, Harry Fabian, is a crook, right? So the ordinary rules do not apply. And if you're saying, his work visa was up, sorry, David, I have to say, work visas are up for a lot of people in a lot of countries all over the world. And yet, like my late friend Roy, who was an Englishman who lived in this country, his work visa expired a long time ago and he was selling real estate in this country. So, I mean, it's not I don't know that matters. And the character of Bill Saunders in okay, here's the deal. Both of these movies, Night in the City and Kiss the Blood Off My Hands, are British novels, right? And I think am I incorrect? I think they're both written by the same guy. I think they're both Jared Kirsch novels.
I didn't realize
he wrote the original, both of them. And Bill Saunders was a Canadian in the novel. Of course, Burt Lancaster played him as an American GI who stayed in England after the war. And Harry Fabian in the original novel was not an American. He was British.
Yeah.
And obviously, 20th Century Fox, when they bought the rights to the book, that movie was made at a very interesting time when Darryl Zanuck decided not to transplant it to America, but to make it in England so that he could send Jules Dassin over to England to direct the movie to avoid his confrontation with the House Un-American Activities Committee. That was the whole reason the film was made in England, was for his benefit, really. And, I think it just works because Widmark is great. He's fantastic. And he's a black marketeer, and he's an operator. I don't think his work papers matter in the scheme of things. And of course, everything Burt Lancaster does in Kiss the Blood Off My Hands is black market work. I mean, he's not. And there's a lot of movies like this. Like I'm thinking of Victor Mature in The Long Haul that he did in the 50s with Diana Dors. It's the same kind of setup. I mean, he's an American transplanted to England. And if American GIs married British women, they could stay in England. I mean, that's kind of the premise in The Long Haul. But there's a lot of movies like this, and this has more to do with the filmmaking collaborations between the United States and England, whether they were cooperative collaborations or enforced collaborations via, quota quickies in the 30s and stuff like that, or or later on when just a lot of American actors went to England to keep working. Dane Clark and Alexis Smith, Gloria Graham made a picture in England. It was just a business decision. So which completely superseded the logic of, oh, would this person have a visa to stay in the country? Just doesn't it? It just doesn't matter, especially when it's a noir film and these guys are all involved in criminal activity anyway.
Yeah, and also usually the problem comes if you like leave the country and you're coming back in.
Yeah,
that's when you have a problem with the visa. Because my dad worked for a international oil company actually, and so we were living in London, and we actually were coming back. Friggin' Brits! We were coming back into England, and so we're coming through customs because we had been like, I don't know, I think we were in Italy or something. I can't remember. It was getting near the end of my dad's like work visa ending, and they're like questioning him, and it's just like, look at this guy going, are you kidding me? Do you think that he's like working at the local grocery store or something? You know what I mean? This is ridiculous. Like, you think he's
yeah.
be doing this job illegally? Yeah.
Well, it's
Black market geologist.
yeah, exactly. Well, there are certainly a lot of people in grocery stores around here that, if you ask them for their papers, I don't know they'd be able to produce them.
Yeah. That's okay.
Anyway,
That's what makes America great.
There you go. Okay, here's a question from Brian. He says, I'm curious if you're familiar with a tongue-in-cheek 19. Uh-oh, hold on. Hold on. I got to do something really quick because the juice is gonna leave my computer shortly if I don't make a adjustment here. Hold on.
I'll fix
There
my
you go.
earpiece. There you go.
There you go. Now I'm back. Okay, we now have more juice in my computer. Are you familiar with the tongue-in-cheek 1954 homage to film noir produced as a 30-minute black and white episode of the Adventures of Superman TV series? Titled Semi-Private Eye? The cast included Elijah Cook and veteran noir heavies Paul Fix, Richard Benedict, and Alf Linder. Okay, I have something else to say about that, but I'll wait. Cub reporter Jimmy Olsen impersonates Bogart, complete with trench coat, fedora, and bogey-style accent. Cook's Homer Garrity character finds it mildly amusing. It ends with Superman rescuing Olsen, Garrity, and Lois Lane, the great Noel Neal, from a gangster's poison gas cloud. It's satire, but very good-natured. Have you seen this? Did you ever watch the old Superman shows?
No, I've never really seen the old Superman shows.
No, yeah, I actually have. I know this. I know exactly what Brian is talking about here. Yes, it's an amusing episode, and Superman is barely in it. That's why it's kind of interesting. So, yes, I have seen it, Brian. But what's most interesting to me about it is I have a story I will be happy to share. Jack Larson, who played Jimmy Olsen, was such an interesting person. And he does have a ball kind of imitating Bogart. And it's Jimmy Olsen's episode. This is an episode that all revolves around him. And I don't know. I mean, people who are big fans of Superman, they must know everything there is to know about Jack Larson. But for people who don't know this, Jack Larson was at that time with Montgomery Clift. They were like a thing. They were a couple, and eventually Jack Larson became the partner of James Bridges, the filmmaker James Bridges, and which was and the connection. And now I'm tripping out here, and because there's a connection with Mike's question tonight about audiences laughing and stuff. And here is the connection. I had dinner with Jack Larson years ago uh, because uh, we had Farley Granger as a guest at the Cinematheque screenings in LA. And it was like it was just an odd thing that all these like gay guys who were in Hollywood in the 50s all came out to this dinner for Farley Granger, right? Curtis Harrington and Jack Larson and anyway, I won't run down the whole list, but there were like 12 people there. Uh-oh, somebody's going to come over here and steal the show now. I noticed that we had both Charlotte and Emily
Yeah.
tonight. Yes, she perked up when I started. She must be a Jack Larson fan. Anyway, I remember talking to Jack Larson about seeing this film Mike's Murder. Have you ever seen the movie Mike's Murder?
Oh, the one with
Deborah Winger.
Deborah Winger, yeah.
Deborah Winger and Paul Winfield and God, I can't remember who else was in it. Anyway, James Bridges made this movie. It was his noir film. And I saw a sneak preview of Mike's Murder at a theater in Larkspur, California, before it came out, and the audience completely turned on the movie in the middle.
Yeah.
And this is exactly why when I said the problem is not really with the movie, it's with a completely full house.
Yeah.
Because that audience, it was packed. And all it takes is one person to start laughing at something that's a little off.
Yeah.
Right? And then you lose the crowd.
Yeah.
And Jack told, and there was a scene in that movie where a woman says a line of dialogue that is so stilted. It had something to do with looking through a peephole in the movie, right? Or in this scene, she goes, "Well, I saw him through the small peephole key thing or something," and it just the audience just laughed, and then it was off to the races.
Yeah.
And Jack told me years later that Jim Bridges spent the rest of the movie curled up in a fetal position in the projection room crying because he realized it was all over.
Yeah.
You know, that the preview was going to go badly. The audience turned on him. He screwed. I mean, there are several grotesque mistakes in that movie that he just didn't see and anticipate. And anyway, I don't know why I'm talking. That's my Jack Larson story, but I knew Jack, and Jack also knew Tab Hunter very well, and gave me a lot of great information when I was writing the Tab Hunter autobiography. So there, Brian,
Yeah.
You weren't expecting that answer to your question about that semi-private eye episode of Superman, but yes, I have seen it, and it's amusing.
Yeah. And I was just going to say a really quick story. So about Niagara, about people laughing, because my dad was on leave and he saw Niagara in the theater and he said he had never seen an audience laughing that hard. They were really young and stuff. But, so
now,
you know,
were they laughing at Joseph Cotton?
I think they were laughing at the whole film. It sounded like they just started Cotton, and it just didn't stop.
It's an unfortunate thing that can happen.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting because it's important for people to realize that movies are live shows.
Mm-hmm.
They are live shows. And even though it's not a theater production, and I doubt that people would have the temerity to laugh at a live theater show, you know, because you realize, fuck, they're right. Oh, yeah. They're right there in front of me, you know?
Yeah.
I can't laugh. But they don't feel that in a movie.
Yeah.
Because the actors aren't there.
Yeah.
So they feel like they have license to laugh at it. But because they do it once, it doesn't mean it's going to happen every time. I
Yeah.
mean, live shows are very, very different. I've shown some movies so many times that I can tell you it plays great in one house at one time, and it's a disaster another time. I mean, I when I showed Cry of the Hunted, this Joseph Lewis movie in Los Angeles, the audience went berserk. They loved it, and I said, "Wow, this is going to play like gangbusters in San Francisco." And then I showed it, and nothing. There was no reaction whatsoever. It was like that really wasn't very good. And so it is just like a concert or a theater show or a ballet or something. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
You're not watching exactly the same movie because it's not the same audience. Okay. Um, me now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Scott from Los Angeles says, in watching TCM's marathon of Dick Tracy movies recently, it struck me how noirish these films were. A lot of scenes had a great noir look, and the originals and the criminals, I'm sorry, I can't read, and the criminals are straight out of any noir of the 40s. Flat Top. Would these Dick Tracy movies be considered film noir? And if so, would Eddie show them on either Noir Alley or at a film noir festival? You are right, because they were produced at the House of Noir, and they had some of the same cinematographers who shot those great noir movies. And I doubt I would ever show them on Noir Alley. I will confess to disappointment that I didn't get to introduce them when they were on TCM, because I would have loved to, because they're really fun, and some good directors were involved in some of those films. And it's conceivable I would show them at a Noir City festival if it worked with the overall scheme of the festival. But those are really interesting movies, and I think uh, Dick Tracy, the comic strip itself, was really interesting. I mean, it was like between the 30s and what Chester Gould did, adapting all of this American iconography of crime to that comic strip, was really interesting. And then throwing in the little, two-way wrist radio stuff and all that was pretty cool. And it's so grotesque. I mean, Dick Tracy's the most grotesque comic strip of its time. And I love all the villains and how bizarre the whole thing is. It's great. So I love the comic strip, and I admire what Warren Beatty tried to do with his adaptation of the movie. I don't know that it worked necessarily, uh, but anyway, yeah. Scott, not out of the question. You may see Dick Tracy at a Noir City festival one of these days.
Okay. And I realized I made you read two in a row. Oh well.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. This is from Gerard. Charlie Chan. Would you consider the Charlie Chan movies noir, and should they be aired regardless of the Chinese aspect of them? There were times of the day and part of our history, but the movies were good. And is there a chance that they would ever air on Noir Alley or in TCM in general?
I agree. Some of the Charlie Chan movies and the Mr. Moto movies are really pretty good. I mean, that's how Norman Foster directed some of those Mr. Moto movies, and that's how he became a film director. I know it's a hot button issue. Um, it's tricky. I mean, I've considered showing, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember which one it is right now. There's one set on Treasure Island during the World's Fair.
Yeah,
right?
Zodiac Killer.
Yeah, and I would totally show that at a Noir City festival in the Bay Area, and I would introduce it, and I would have no qualms about its uh, incorrectness, of having a Caucasian actor playing the character. Um, whether or not that's going to work on TCM, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something we talk about a lot uh, because TCM's default mode, as far as I'm concerned, is always in favor of showing the films. That's like the default mode. And what do we have to do to be able to show the film, right? Not defend the film or justify the film, just show the film, right? Because we agree that it's all movie history. And that's why there are hosts, right? To put the stuff in context. And um, so, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's not something anybody's running to do. But again, I don't think it's something that's out of the question.
Yeah, and I love those movies. I actually own them all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've read all the books, and actually there is a really great book, and I think it's called Finding Charlie Chan, but it was written by a actually Chinese American guy. He actually came over to I think he's actually in the hard sciences, but he got really interested in Charlie Chan when he found out that Charlie Chan was based on a real person. So it's kind of interesting because it's a biography of the guy who's based on, who, by the way, was in something else. Like, some of this guy's stories are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then sort of his own journey and stuff like that. It's really good though. And it also kind of puts it's an interesting way to read about Charlie Chan and that history and how it impacts people and why he felt positive towards the films and stuff. But anyway, that's a really good book. I meant to pull it out before we recorded so I could show people the cover, but that
it's
book is
very
really
interesting
good.
because I just, I'll just throw this out there. My attitude about all this stuff about canceling stuff that's, you know, inappropriate, cultural appropriation, all of that is like, well, then just make a movie that you think balances the scales so that we don't have to obliterate the original works because there's a lot of value in the original stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you can see the progression, right? I don't understand why you want the original stuff to disappear. No matter what your attitude about it is, why would you want it to disappear?
Well, and also I think it's also I mean, this is a thing that I also see a lot of, which it also seems like unevenly applied, because Breakfast at Tiffany's, that is the most despicable portrayal of an Asian man I've never seen. There is nothing in the Charlie Chan
Because
films
it's
that is
because
offensive
it's
there.
Mickey Rooney. Because he is just, it's intolerable. That film, it's like, on the one hand you have Audrey Hepburn, one of the most watchable people in the history of movies, and on the other hand you have Mickey Rooney
Hmm.
pandering and mugging and embarrassing himself in the worst possible way.
No.
And it's just like, that's not a movie that's not a movie I revisit often.
Yeah.
Right? Give me Experiment in Terror any day. It's a Blake Edwards film, right? Anyway, okay.
Okay.
All right. Kingpin Johnny is back from Doylestown, PA. He is talking about Woman in the Window and Scarlet Street. They have strikingly similar stories about a meek middle-aged man drawn to the dark side after a chance encounter with a younger woman, and they use the same three stars, of course: Edward G. Robinson, Joan Bennett, and Dan Duryea, and the same cinematographer, Milton Krasner. Do you know of any other instances where a director made such a close variation on his own film? And Kingpin Johnny also wants to know which one we think is better. Scarlet Street is generally held in higher regard. I like both, but Woman has better performances and balance. He thinks Scarlet Street is marred by going completely over the top at other times and is capped by an almost laughably tormented ending. And he qualifies this by saying, my opinion, of course. Okay, so Anne, you've seen both of them, right?
Yes.
What is your take on these, and which one is your preference?
I mean, I really like both of them, like for completely different reasons. Like I like the first because I really like Woman in the Window. Like I think it's kind of an underrated film. I think it suffers a lot with the comparison to Scarlet Street, but I really enjoyed it a lot. I mean, it's just so because it's so suspenseful. I mean, that aspect of it is really yeah, because the other film really is more like cause, I don't know, they're like very because Woman in the Window, like I said, I mean, it has that it's just really suspenseful, so it's kind of a different thing. Whereas Scarlet Street is really just like a drama. There isn't that much suspense. I mean, it's more just about you're seeing this guy.
It's the inevitable spiral down into despair and darkness. Yes.
And Dan Dury is sleazy in both of them, so 2 thumbs up.
He Duryea kind of steals both those movies. Yes. Well, Duryea doesn't really steal Scarlet Street because everybody is great in
Yeah.
Scarlet Street. But it's interesting that anyway, his question was, is there any time a director has done his own film again? Well, there's a lot of those.
Howard
There's a
Hawks.
lot of those.
Howard Hawks was my first thought.
They're basically making the same movie over and over again. I mean, in some ways, that's kind of the definition of a film artist, is they're sort of making the same movie over and over and trying to perfect it. But I know what Johnny is talking about here, and well, for example, Maxwell Shane made a picture in 1947 called Fear in the Night, an adaptation of a Cornell Woolrich story. And 9 years later, he made the same movie as Nightmare with Edward G. Robinson and Kevin McCarthy. It's the same movie.
In all fairness, Woolrich, also, those are actually two different source materials from Woolrich, though. It was based on two different stories because Woolrich did that.
Well, because Woolrich stole from himself constantly. I mean, it's unbelievable how much this guy recycled plots for his stories. And have you seen? God, I'm embarrassed. I'm drawing a blank on the director now. The Vanishing. Georges Sluzier, I think is his name. Belgian filmmaker, did The Vanishing. Have you seen that?
You know, it's really weird. I've only seen the American version. I've never actually seen the original version.
Oh my God, Anne.
I know, it's so terrible. Like it's been like I've got to get to it at some
The Belgian version is extraordinary.
I know.
It's fantastic. And then he remade it in America with Jeff Bridges and Kiefer Sutherland. And when you've seen the original one, the American remake is impossible. It's unacceptable, you know, because the original is noir, you know, as whatever the guy in Spinal Tap would say. It's like noir turned up to 11. So I love that film. And I know there are other examples of this, but I used to be totally in the Scarlet Street camp. It's like, oh, this is the movie he intended to make, but the production code prohibited it. And then because Woman in the Window was made with a studio.
Yeah.
And Scarlet Street was made independently by Fritz Lang's own, you know, he and Joan Bennett and Walter Wanger and Dudley Nichols formed a company. And it always appeared to me that they formed the company in order to make The Woman in the Window the way it was supposed to be made. But in truth, The Woman in the Window is a remake, right? It's La Chienne, the Renoir film. And it's not the same story. It just happens to have the same people in it. It's the same, you know, the same performers. Because Lang was like, why would I cast somebody else? I mean, all these people are perfect for this, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciate how well done the final scene is in Woman in the Window when he falls asleep in the chair and then everything is revealed that it
Yeah.
was a that it was a well, is there anybody who hasn't seen the movie? Am I not supposed to
This
say
is a
how it ends?
spoiler alert.
Yeah, I shouldn't spoil it. But it has a what a lot of people consider to be a cop out ending.
I don't know.
But
I'll be honest
over
with you.
go ahead.
That ending's never bothered me. It did. Yeah, that was fine. I don't know. I just have never had like I said, I've just never had a beef with the film. I think it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
And I've come to appreciate The Woman in the Window a lot more over the years. When you're younger, you always if you're like me, you always side with the tougher,
yeah.
grimmer, downer ending. Like, oh my God, that's and then you get older and it's like, oh, thank God the poor guy didn't actually suffer all that. So you have two versions, and it's like a Rorschach test. You get
Yeah.
to decide, which one do I relate to more. So I hold both in high esteem. I think that Woman in the Window was an important film in the development of film noir because it was part of that whole that year when Murder My Sweet and Phantom Lady and Woman in the Window and Double Indemnity, all these movies came out at the same time. It was important to the development of film noir. And then for whatever reason, Lang just did it again.
Yeah.
And I think both of them are excellent films.
Yeah.
Okay, is it me now? I can't remember.
I think no, you just did Scarlet Street, right?
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
here we go.
So this is John from how do you say that?
Bethesda, Maryland.
Bethesda, Maryland.
I know that because my wife was operated on at the Bethesda Naval Hospital when she was a very young girl.
Okay.
So I know that. Okay.
I recently watched a bunch of early 1930s Joan Bennett movies on the Criterion Channel. I was struck by the contrast of her wisecracking, sassy characters in those films with the film noir role she would go on to play in the 40s and 50s. The only actress who comes quickly to mind with a similar transition to film noir is Barbara Stanwyck, and to a lesser degree, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. Can you think of any others?
That's interesting. I don't. I think Joan Bennett changed. She changed completely. I don't think Barbara Stanwyck actually changed.
Yeah.
I think Barbara Stanwyck was what you see in those pre-code movies is a variation on what you get in her 40s films, right? Yeah. Crawford, as she matured, got far more serious as an actress, and Bette Davis was always Bette Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to just throw out, although she didn't make a lot of noir films, but Joan Blondell.
That's who I thought of too.
Made that transition. She didn't work a lot in the 40s, but she was different. She was totally different from the character she played in the 30s to what she was doing in like Nightmare Alley and
yeah.
I don't know. Is there anybody else you can think of? I know that Constance Bennett, Joan Bennett's sister, made a couple of noir films in The Unsuspected. She's in The Unsuspected, but it's a meager role she has in that film.
Like Rosalind Russell.
Yeah, Rosalind Russell.
And Loretta Young. I mean, they didn't do a lot, but
Loretta Young, good one. Yeah, Loretta Young, great example. Yes. Oh my God. I saw. I'm going to embarrass myself now because I'm drawing a blank on the title of the film. But I saw this Loretta Young picture in Bologna. I shouldn't have had these martinis. Where she was with Spencer Tracy in this wonderful pre-code picture. Was there a more beautiful woman in the world than Loretta Young in when she was in those pre-code movies? Oh my God,
I would
she was.
say Elizabeth Taylor, if you see Date with Judy, when she was about 18 in that shot in color, she's the most beautiful friggin'
It's
things I have. She is so beautiful. She's
yeah.
like Robert Taylor and Camille beautiful. Like when I saw Taylor and Camille, I literally stopped that film probably 3 times because it hurt to look at him in that film. He was
Yeah,
so beautiful.
yeah. Well, I kind of feel that way about Loretta Young in those pre-code movies, but then she
But I have,
did.
yeah. Is it with
She
Spencer
she made that
Tracy?
transition.
Yeah, but the one with Spencer Tracy, is that the one where he's a journalist and there's that whole golden cage metaphor? Or am I thinking of something
It's
else?
the one where they're living in the shanty town, and he's he's a hustler and he's trying to uh, get a refrigerator for her. It's a great Depression era romance, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of people wince at it because there's so much sexist stuff in the movie, but you got to go with it. And I'm embarrassed that I'm not remembering the title of it right now, but you got to go with it because you can tell that that's not where the movie is going to end up.
Yeah.
And it was just a wonderful film. And but then she was great. She did her noir stuff, and as much of a goody two shoes as Loretta Young always you know is depicted in real life. She pulled off some really good performances in her later. She's great in The Stranger. She's great in The Accused. She's great in Cause for Alarm. These were all noir, and obviously the other movies she made at that time. She's terrific,
Yeah.
and so yeah, there's a good example. I mean, I don't know that she changed entirely from the pre-code era, but she matured um, in a different way than say Joan Crawford did in her films. So okay,
Okay.
um, okay. Pam says my question is this: uh, since Eddie is not all noir and has admitted, I love that. Like I confessed my love for Doris Day. Would he consider Julie to be her noir film or the closest thing to it? Or maybe Midnight Lace? Actually, Pam, I my favorite Doris Day movie is Love Me or Leave Me with Jimmy Cagney. And even though it's considered a musical bio, I consider it to be kind of a noir film. I've actually shown it at the Noir City Festival in San Francisco when we had a whole. The theme was artists because she plays Ruth Etting in that film, the '20s singer, and I just love that movie. I think it's a great movie, and uh, yeah, I mean, and you know, she's also in Young Man with a Horn. She's not the
Yeah.
lead in that. That's um, there's it's noir stained because of the time in which it was made. And Midnight Lace is definitely a woman in jeopardy film. And there's no way to say that Doris Day made noir films. Even like The Man Who Knew Too Much. That's a Hitchcock film. It's not
Yeah.
really a film noir. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I obviously I showed Julie. I don't know, since these are old questions, maybe Pam didn't realize when she was writing this that I showed Julie on Noir Alley not that long ago. Uh, anyway, I'm glad that Doris Day is not a. She had potentially a very, very noir life that she overcame
Yeah.
and turned it all around and became this fabulous person that I admire immensely. So I hope people understand that when I talk about my fondness for Doris Day, it's as much for her off screen as a person as it is for what she was as a performer.
Okay, so this final question is from Kitaman. Eddie, are you a fan of westerns? And what are your favorites? My all-time favorite is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. Now, would any qualify as noir?
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely noir westerns. Alan, our colleague at the Film Noir Foundation, Alan Rohde, just showed the other night Blood on the Moon in Chicago as part of the Noir City Festival. Blood on the Moon and Pursued and Ramrod and The Secret of Convict Lake and Day of the Outlaw. These are all kind of noir westerns.
No
Um,
Name on the Bullet.
no Name on the Bullet, your favorite with Audie
Yeah.
Murphy. Uh, yeah, and there's Station West with Dick Powell and Jane Greer is definitely a noir western. Um, my favorite western of all time, I without question, is The Wild Bunch. Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch. That is which I is in my top 10 films of all time. But I love Stagecoach. I love Red River. There's just obviously I mean, I know people love The Searchers, and while I love The Searchers, and there's still things about it that I find problematic, and it's not the Ethan Edwards character. It's the bad attempts at comedy and levity and The Searchers kind of wreck.
That's not even in my top 10 Ford films. I do
Well,
not understand the love for The Searchers. I mean,
Like
it's a
why
good
people love The
movie.
Searchers.
I know a
Yeah.
lot of people do, but it's like I like War Wagon and
You mean you?
not
No,
War Wagon.
you mean Wagon Master.
Wagon Master.
Wagon
Excuse me.
Master is
Wagon
yeah.
Master,
Wagon
which is a
Master is great.
fantastic film,
Yes, yes.
and Rio Grande,
Rio Grande is
which is
great.
incredible.
Yeah, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. I have a great fondness for She Wore a Yellow
Yeah.
Ribbon. I mean, a lot of Fort Apache is a great movie.
Yeah.
This happens. It's very interesting to be at this point in our lives and see like the turning. Like if 10 years ago, everybody would have said, what are the three greatest American movies ever made? And the vote would have been Citizen Kane, Vertigo, and The Searchers.
Yeah.
Like everybody would have said that. And now I don't think you can find 10 people to list those three movies as the greatest American movies ever made. Is that right or wrong? I have no idea. It just shows you how tastes change. And I know, Sam Peckinpah is for a lot of people a problematic filmmaker. I think The Wild Bunch is one of the greatest accomplishments of movie making ever, and I love all the actors in it. I think the performances are extraordinary. The direction of action is beyond belief. Everybody talks about the last, the big shootout at the end. Yes, that's an epic in Hollywood history, but the robbery of the train in the middle of that movie is probably, people say, what are the greatest heist scenes ever? I say Rafifi and The Wild Bunch.
Yeah.
Because the robbery of that train in The Wild Bunch is extraordinary how great the movie making is in that.
And I was going to say too, with Westerns, For a Few Dollars More, which is my favorite Leone film. I love For a Few Dollars More. I love Lee Van Cleef in that film.
Yeah.
God, that's a great performance.
The Leone films
and the
are
soundtrack's
great.
amazing, but that one's my favorite. I know most people say like the other ones, but For a Few Dollars More, because I think it's my favorite story of them, because it just, and that idea too of sort of what those two characters represent in terms of sort of someone who's on a personal, you find out is on a personal quest, and that's what's motivating him. It's sort of more gentlemanly character, and this person who's just in it for the money. And oh my God, if you guys have not seen For a Few Dollars More,
there's a lot of
watch it.
There's a lot of great westerns. There are a lot of great westerns, and a mediocre western doesn't interest me, but a really, I won't watch. I'll watch a mediocre noir.
Yeah.
Just for the style and the language and everything. a mediocre Western doesn't really interest me, but a great Western is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it, and I'm trying to think if there are any others that I'm leaving out. I mean, I do love Peckinpah's Ride the High Country because I just think it's so great to see Joel McCrea and Randolph Scott as older guys. And Peckinpah does right by them. He's making the movie that they always deserve to make. Although Randolph Scott made a lot of great westerns. All those Bud Bedecker
Yeah,
westerns
the
are
Bedecker
really
films.
are
Yeah, those
really
are
really
great.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and if people haven't seen Day of the Outlaw, the Andre de Toth Day of the Outlaw, it's like Western in the snow, and it's fantastic. Robert Ryan is great in it. Burl Ives is fantastic as the villain in that film. It's good stuff. So, okay,
Okay.
are we good? Are we
Yeah,
done?
that was it. I thought we didn't end on westerns.
Okay, perfect. We
Yeah,
we went long. We went long
yeah, we
tonight,
did a
and I
little
was
long. Yeah,
thinking I was thinking this was going to be a
I
shorter one.
I know. I was like, okay, this is just gonna be like I lopped off one less question than last time, so we should be like golden.
But it's fun, Ann. It's always fun
Yeah,
talking with you.
thank you.
And people could see again the light changed through my whole thing here because now
Very
I'm like
circles.
my face is like completely screwed up because the sun went down and the light was balanced and now the light is not balanced, but
Yeah,
that's the way it goes.
that's that's the way it goes.
Okay, but we're going to be doing these regularly, and I
Okay.
think let's try to hone it down and do an hour instead of 90 minutes, but more often. But we'll do it more often
Okay.
if we can do it. So
Okay.
okay,
So there was something I was gonna say. So North City events. So when this airs, Chicago will be over. So when's Detroit?
Detroit is I think the 20. I don't know. I have to look at. I just go where they
I
push
wrote
me.
the press release for it and I can't remember.
It's coming up. It's the 20. It's either the September 22nd to the 24th or the 21st to the 23rd or
It's a Friday through a
something.
Sunday.
It's a Friday through a Sunday with a 2 at the start of it. And I'm greatly looking forward to that. It's a good lineup of films, and like I say, uh, now at that one, come prepared to stay the whole day. If you're coming to Noir City, Detroit, just buy in for the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
There isn't a lot else to do around the Redford Theater, so just come and hang out, and I'll be there the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, just hanging out. I'd love to meet everybody and say hi, and then after that is DC,
Mm-hmm.
starting on October 13th. So I will be there the 13th, 14th, and 15th. The 15th is my birthday. So it's like for 7 or 8 years in a row, I've celebrated my birthday in Silver Spring, Maryland for some. Well, we know what the reason
Yeah.
is. It's because it's Noir City. So that'll be great fun. I think I'm going to the Morelia International Film Festival after that to introduce the Argentinian noirs that we have restored. We're going to be showing those in Morelia. And then after that is the TCM cruise from November 6th to the 11th. Don't bother. If you haven't signed up for the cruise yet, you're probably not going to get on because it's sold out. There's a waiting list. I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that all that is copacetic because I know that there was some question about whether the Screen Actors Guild strike would impact people who had agreed to come on the cruise. But they announced them all, so I'm assuming that's okay. That the Screen Actors Guild gave a waiver to Kim Novak and Elliot Gould, and I spacing out on who else is going on the cruise right now. But my buddy Ernest Dickerson, the director cinematographer, will be there. I'm looking forward to that. Cruises are great fun. So anyway, that's the deal. So
and then don't forget, people, December NOIR City Christmas, and we'll do this all again next year.
and then yes, and I will the next time we do this, I will announce the dates of the NOIR City Festival here in the Bay Area in Oakland. And I'm actually working on that program right now. And it'll be very interesting. I'm not prepared to say what it is, but to me, it's a very, very inventive program. I'm trying to satisfy everyone.
Well, good luck with that.
Well, I'm trying to show movies that have not shown at previous Noir City festivals or on Noir Alley, and also combine double bills of English language and foreign films, where the films have common DNA, but they're made in different countries. So it's very complicated. So
yeah. Well, people, I mean, our two foreign festivals have been like, people always rave about those.
They do rave about them, but I am also aware of the fact that a lot of people now come because they see me on
of
TCM,
course. Yeah.
And they don't want to travel distance to read subtitles.
Right.
So it's like, okay, maybe we could figure out a way to do split shows that are like, you're going to get a classic noir film that you haven't seen, I hope, but I'm going to pair it with a foreign film that I know you haven't seen.
Yeah.
That fits perfectly in the scheme of things. So that's the idea. Cool. There, I said it. I wasn't going to say it, and I said it anyway. Okay.
Yeah, and I was just going to say really quick too. I mean, I really enjoyed the 1948 films. What can I say? I know I'd seen most of them before, but it was just really great, especially seeing Edward G. Robinson on the big screen. I mean, those three films we showed in three completely different performances.
Yep.
You see those all together, and you're like, he is so underrated as an actor.
And this was Key Largo, Night Has a Thousand Eyes, and what was the other?
All My Sons.
All My Sons. Yeah, we showed All My Sons. That's right. Yeah. Very, yeah.
I mean, that was, and he made all three of those films in the same year.
Yeah, that's 1 year, and there were more.
Yeah, those were not the only three.
I couldn't get House of Strangers, which I know it's technically, a lot of people list that as technically a 1949 film, but I have so wanted to show House of Strangers, and it's not it. It actually, I had scheduled it on Noir Alley, and it got pulled for some rights reason or something, and I'm still looking forward to showing that at some point, because that's a great performance and a great Richard Conte performance. And anyway, we're done. We're done here.
So if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe and share, please, please, please. We don't do subscriptions or Patreon or any of the stuff a lot of YouTubers do. So if you want to throw some money at us, just go to filmnoirfoundation.org. If you do $20 or more and sign up on our email list, we will send you the digital version of NOIR City magazine, so you get a link every time it comes out. You download it and you can print it out on your printer at work.
People thank you, Ann. People need to realize that we're kind of crazy because we give people the best deal in the world, because we don't badger you for donations really, but the magazine is beyond belief. And now with Vince Keenan did a great job editing the publication. Imogen Sarah Smith is the finest writer on film in the world today, and she's the editor-in-chief of the magazine. The next issue is absolutely spectacular. So the fact that, the next issue of the magazine is worth way more than $20 just for that single digital issue.
Yeah.
But you'll get the magazine for a year after that. and be donating to the foundation. So just do it. I mean, it's and we will have a new restoration to premiere in January at the festival.
You'll see where your money
in the Bay
goes.
Area. Yeah, yeah, you will
Your
see
money
where your
goes-
money goes.
Your money goes to our restorations. That is why I have had nothing but spec deadlines for the past 6 weeks.
Okay, Ann, I'm going to go eat dinner. In fact,
Okay.
I'm going to go cook dinner.
Okay,
So I know you're going to go have a smoke.
I'm gonna go have a smoke and then go to bed.
Okay, I'm going to have a cocktail and eat my dinner and watch the last episode of Telemarketers.
Cool.
Okay, I'll
Okay.
see you later.
See you later. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.